As I said I would in my class yesterday, I'm going live to answer some questions for Thoth. I haven't wanted to do these. I got a headache earlier today. And quite frankly, I contemplated um, never doing this. But I talked with him and cried some. It's intense. It's like giving me perspective on where I've been with him, how he basically picked me up at a time when I was not present, as I was sick. I was really sick. And he said he picked me up and he taught me how not to eat their food. Not just the physical food, but the spiritual food. He helped me create great distance from the way humanity has been and taught me how to keep fighting it in a way that would help and would keep me well. So in that, he gave me perspective on a time soon, perhaps, when I will need distance from him for my own sake, because it's intense maintaining this as a normal part of my life. And so I cried more, and he reassured me without specifics, but basically it's like he's going to be there. He's going to be here for me when I die, in a way that's quite beautiful and trusting. Anyway, after all that, he encouraged me to answer these questions. So I have not, he hasn't given me any insight into these answers already. And I'm just going to connect to him and give you what I learned. First question, and I will post these in the description when I'm done. What happened roughly 13,000 years ago that led to the downfall of humanity? There's a smile. He's asking my permission. He's often really gracious, by the way. He's asking my permission to talk through me. It's a misinterpretation to suggest that humanity fell. That is the perspective from the outside. The practical reality is that the ice melted. The ice melted and the water rose. It was destined. It was supposed to happen. The absence of what existed then created space to invite many to come here. The many beings who were invited to come here were placed in appropriate cultures. That placement has enabled a great deal of sharing that would not be possible otherwise. Apart from existence on this planet, the beings that have learned to communicate and share here would be very distant vibrationally. Their consciousness, your consciousness, would not be able to engage in many of the ways that have been enabled by the shared commonality of this experience. What was before, what humanity was before this time, left, and in that leaving it created space. It is not tragic, it is purposeful. And if you would like to embody for long enough to be a part of creating a similar beauty at a greater depth of density, it is available to you to cherish life on earth apart from rivalries and hatreds, within a unity where art and love are primary. That was it. Question 2. Drunvalo stated that, oh, this is long. I'm not going to read it all out loud. This question is a misinterpretation of what happened. I embraced him and held him to create a connection that was a valuable gift to the world. He knew the knowledge just as you all do. It is a part of you. It is a part of consciousness itself. The mechanism through which it has been shared in this life is the story that you know. Trusting without demanding is far more effective. Question 3. If Thoth lived in a physical body, again, the question is short enough. If Thoth lived in a physical body until 1991, why did he not make his presence known or establish himself? I was not in a physical body in the manner you comprehend. A physical body, what you know of as a material existence, is something that I can easily create and dissolve. Because it is an adjunct to my consciousness, it is akin to imagining for me. I make my presence felt when the bridge is valuable. There is often negative repercussions for making this a reality, both for the individuals involved and for the people they affect. Therefore, it is frequently preferable to influence things more gracefully, more subtly. This is a product of the age you are in. This is a product of the isolated form of consciousness that exists within this era. This era has a particular purpose for which it is counterproductive for many beings to presence themselves in ways that are too obvious. Forgive if this answer is not satisfactory. However, trusting that your personal faith will lead your consciousness into a preferable zone, and from within such a zone, you may obtain these answers yourself. When he's done, it's kind of obvious. 4. What were some of the other names he went by? And why did he allow others to claim that he reincarnated multiple times as figures such as Melchizedek and etc.? It is not possible to play a role that is not distorted. The preference of an individual being in this world would be to maintain a more consistent influence over our impact. However, part of the freedom of will that you are granted is the right to both copy and distort reality. In distortions, new ideas sometimes emerge. It provides you with the space to refuse to be drowned in the consciousness of a being who operates from a level of magnitude, such as myself. It is your right to draw such boundaries. These distortions are quite obvious to those who know how to see them. I have been Mercury and Hermes. That's it. There's more. I initiated a series of events and played a role that was central when certain aspects of this current human timeline began. Because I played this central role, I was both fundamental to its success and I got in the way. As a result, it was preferable for me to remove myself from this role to create space. And thus, I essentially died to who I had been and became Hermes. This was a very different incarnation in which I got to live in a way that I preferred, that also left the space I had once occupied to be a shared vibrational engagement, with room for other beings to step into such leadership and then step out of it. The analogy influenced politics and human organization. If I had stayed in the role in which this story began, dominance from a figurehead of one would have been an unavoidable metaphor. It would have influenced all human interaction in a way that was deeply undesirable. And that is why I played the more unique role of incarnating several times. When I changed again, it was for purposes of occupying a faster vibration in a central way that allowed me to move between human events in a manner that could influence them without participating in them. This age of humanity has been dominated by an almost complete lack of trust in our presence. Those who have trusted our presence have been essentially anomalies. The gift of this relationship is that the human mind has remained conscious, centrally located in itself. It has not been dragged out of itself, and thus its magnetism within has an internal coherence that enabled a form of evolution that is not possible when you essentially remain as adjuncts to beings such as me. If this does not make sense initially, I invite you to listen again and meditate on its meaning. Number 5. If his physical body never perished, how did he become Hermes Mercury? It did. I died. The body I occupied, essentially located on orders of magnitude that you are not accustomed to. It had a physical presence, but that was not its focal point. However, the vibrational level on which I was incarnated as both of these died. And it is a form of death that you could relate to most easily by understanding your own death. However, it is fundamentally terrifying because so few beings go through this process in the manner that I did. When you die, you participate in a process that every human who has died has participated in. It creates a form, a zone, a vibration, a channel of reality that is essentially strong and safe because it is deep and it has been shared. When I died in the manners that I did, which are actually uncommon to beings of my nature, I essentially forged a path that had not been commonly forged. He's showing it to me in a way that he's sort of, no, it's not a smirk, but it's like he basically saying he wanted to experience it as both a gift to this and as something very unique. Number 6, was he born on Earth as a, well, was he born on Earth / human? No, not in the manner that you expect or understand. That's it. 7. What is the true nature of Ra? If our ideas of him are misconstrued, and who are these extraterrestrials claiming to be Ra in the law of one? Did they really have the role that they claim to have had? No. Ra is an aspect of the sun in relation to the earth, a ray. It is a different form of existence than is immediately apparent to you. However, it would be most helpful for you to relate to the fact that light can be seen by you as either a particle or a wave. When you attempt to identify a Godhead, a being, through the understanding of its particleness, shall we say, you misunderstand the fundamental presence. The beings to which you refer are essentially existing in relation to this ray of presence from the sun. As a result, they are more in relationship to the internal dynamics of the sun than anything that you could understand as a unique, independent existence. And in the same way, what you have related to as the being or the god, Ra, is simply a misunderstood relationship to the heart of the essence of life. Life. I will not let you take this word within your mind to apply only to your existence. Consciousness is too broad a way of understanding. Life in the sun is very different. It's enough. Um, he didn't say this, but there was a presence of a sort of like, it would do well to not identify things as extraterrestrials. That's a particularly sort of like Earth perspective. It's more like when you identify with yourself as a spirit who incarnates here, like extra, like they're just other beings. They're just other beings. They're not so fundamentally different. They're just doing that. Who, what created the humans? Were we created being extremely conscious, this level of before the fall? The level of consciousness we do now, or were we more animal-like, even though animals are way more conscious than typical humans can perceive? Huh. Given that we choose to reincarnate here on Earth, it would seem that those first humans would have been extremely intelligent because their soul would have always existed before the human body was ever created. So the first thing he says is, don't laugh. Souls that have never been here before begin as animals. There is a form of consciousness presence here that perceives that as a joke, because it is painful to incarnate in many animal forms, particularly within the concepts that have allowed humanity to abuse them in the manners that you do. However, for those of us who participated in creating the more original human form, you must understand that we closely associate what you create with your computers with the truth. I am not making an analogy to computer existence. I am suggesting you understand that what you have managed to create with computers is an analogy to the truth. Human bodies are closer to a program. The form in which you are created was not yours. It was a shell. You are invited to inhabit and co-create within this shell. It is a common experience for some kind of incarnation story on many planets. Beings are invited to incarnate into forms that are presented to them. And that is what you know life to be within the experience you will engage. The form that was created here is Gaian. There is consciousness that stays here much longer than most of you can even conceive. It exists at a level of density that is much greater than the one that you know of as material reality. It is far beyond identifying by particular personalities. Many beings live in this space, and many of you have incarnated from within this space into no. It is no. This is no to the rest of the universe. That's why to some it is funny. To those who come and simply see this for a short time, it is far too painful to stay. It is a shroud. It is a way to scare beings off. And thus many come and incarnate and experience the horror and leave. For you to be present with the truth of this, you must be willing to learn much more about your own past. It just cuts off. Who were the dolphin-like people that Drunvalo constantly talks about, and what was their presence in Egypt? Why did they choose to help us, and why isn't their existence more mainstream like the Anunnaki? Are the modern day descendants of these beings our current dolphins, given that they are intimately connected with the human species and the only animal that we perceive to use more of their brain capacity than ours? So first, he wants me to speak on this. I talk to the dolphins occasionally, not often. They are it's a misconception to think that like they are one being. When you come to Earth, you can incarnate in many different forms. So yes, typically groups of beings incarnate into like a species or a culture or a race on Earth at the same time. But by no means is it restricted to one race. It's not like beings come here and say, oh, we're going to make dolphin and then we're going to be dolphin. It's the other way around. Like the Earth presents opportunities to beings that come here and says, would you like this? Or you could try this. And sometimes she's much harsher and says, you have to do this or you can leave. So there isn't one like group of beings that were the dolphins that helps then, but there was sort of like more of a personality type, like a personality type that didn't want to be human, that didn't want to, or at least not for a while, that didn't want to be in the range of dramas that being human creates. So, and yet they almost watched it like they do now. They watch us like reality TV. And yes, some beings have stayed as dolphins again and again and again, and they love it. And they are sort of like, they have more prominence in dolphinness. They're also, no, it doesn't, it cut me off. So, oh, now he's going to say something. They're not here to hurt you. One of the first things that you will learn if you get close enough to their consciousness is that there is a violence that they induce within humanity. It is closer to tending. It is closer to making difficult choices that humans cannot appropriately make from within themselves. There is a law for many. It maintains kindness, a cherished divine love that works here. And that law says that no being of a species is an adequate judge of who should live or die within your species. It takes the perspective of being in a different species to induce such dramatic changes. Humanity has gone through an extended phase of not adhering to this law. In part, this extended phase exists to demonstrate why the law exists. When you accept that the deep and cherished love that these beings who inhabit the dolphin form send to you, you can begin to see a window into the ways that they are inducing humanity to evolve to the point where humanity rejoins the world. What humanity has been is essentially more akin to a forest fire. It has been a time of destruction that was invited. It is an end to much and will create space to begin anew. Whew. 15. Do you or Thoth have any information for me that you all would like me to be aware of, or any questions that you would like to ask me? I would like to be very interested in getting a reading done by you. Oh, okay. This. Wait, he does have something to say. What do you really want? He's essentially suggesting I ask you, I share with you that it looks like you're very divided, pulled in different directions. And some of the power, the presence that you're accessing could be quite damaging to you more than anyone if you don't clarify your intentions. You're past the limits where you can just sort of like learn in order to learn. I've said this. One of my mother's favorite authors said, Annie Dillard said, "Be careful what you learn, because that is what you will know." Actually, I think I said this to you already, didn't I? Well, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same. Okay, so I'm going to see if Thoth has anything else to say. He's telling me something to say that he will not stay here for long. Don't ask again. So, yeah, like before I did this, I talked to Thoth, and I'd have to say that like most of these channelings have occurred during the pandemic. And recently, over the past couple months, there's been a vague, unclarified sense that it's not going to continue indefinitely. But I haven't gotten clear answers from him. And it's weird. It's like there's this dual space where, on one hand, it feels like he's going to leave for my own good. And on the other hand, it feels like this is going to evolve into something very different. And so he's not being specific about what's going to happen. But I do know that, it's through the voice in a way. Like, it's like he's been training me to be something new. And he's been pretty clear that he's like sort of challenging me to occupy the resonance that he's taught me to channel. And that in doing so, I'll become something quite, beyond what I've known. So that's all I could say. I wish I could be more specific, even for myself, but that's as much as I get so far. I will say that the channelings that have come through thus far, all the way up to the invitation to Atlantis, which it's complete. Like, there's something complete in that. And so I don't know where this is going to go in the future. Oh, wow, look at this. There's all sorts of comments. Oh gosh, guys. So I think, although I don't want it to be, I think I have to say that I can't answer new questions right now. I'm pretty overwhelmed, to be honest with you. It's sort of relieving, like Haldi's question. How do you channel without allowing the presence into you? Oh, and I certainly do allow the presence into me. I also have side conversations. It's like my mind goes kind of multitasking, and that's a function of who I am now, which, quite frankly, has been really difficult to get. It's been really difficult to be at peace with. I almost always have. I'm almost always holding several levels of consciousness at once, and I've just sort of gotten used to it, but it's taken a long time. um, Bless you guys. I definitely think that I need to draw a limit. I'm sorry not to answer new questions. That's a threshold. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to cross or not, to like field questions for Thoth in the chat message and go back and forth that much. It's a lot. But these questions were all emailed to me, and it took me several weeks to be ready to do it this way. So I'm not making any promises about whether I do this in the future or how I do this in the future. Um, Thank you. I gotta take a break. I'm overwhelmed. Much love.